My own house key was stuck in the lock from the inside. I stood there on the porch, grocery bags cutting into my hands, and in that split second, it hit me like a ton of bricks. My son hadn't moved in to help me out. He'd moved in to take over everything. I didn't yell. I didn't kick them out. I just started changing the rules in my own damn house. The sound of my own front door key turning from the inside was the first red flag. There I was, arms loaded with shopping bags, reaching for nothing but empty air. My privacy had officially expired. Ever since my son Nathan and his wife Leah moved into my place in the Blue Ridge foothills 3 months ago, my personal space had been shrinking by the day. "Oh, Renata, we figured you were still out in the garden. We just wanted to make sure nothing was left open," Leah said casually when she finally opened the door. She was wearing my old linen apron, the one she'd helped herself to from the closet without asking. Nathan sat at the kitchen table, eyes glued to his tablet, and barely muttered a hey. The house didn't smell like my lavender anymore. It smelled like Leah's cheap scented candles. Their bills and catalogs were stacked all over the table, my favorite spot by the window, now occupied by her laptop. I set the heavy bags down without a word. Right then, it sank in. They hadn't come to help me after my husband passed like they'd claimed. They'd come to take over. Leah was already digging through my groceries. "We don't need that fancy cheese, Renata. We've got to watch the budget now," she said with that fake little smile. I didn't answer. I just watched her rearrange my fridge like it was hers. The entitlement in her voice wasn't new, but my patience sure was wearing thin. I headed to my bedroom. The only room still truly mine, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the property deed and bank book in my nightstand drawer. The house was paid off, my late husband's inheritance safely invested. Nathan had no power of attorney, and Leah had nothing but big plans. If they wanted a budget, they were about to get one, just not mine. I grabbed a little notebook and started writing. It was time for some new house rules. The next morning, there was no family breakfast. I'd already had my coffee at 6 and locked up the pantry. When Leah wandered into the kitchen around 9, still half asleep, she found the table empty. No bread, no cold cuts. "Where's breakfast?" she asked, confused. Rattling the pantry door. I was out on the back porch reading the paper. "From now on, everybody fends for themselves, Leah," I said calmly, without looking up. Nathan walked in, forehead creased. "Mom, what's this about?" We agreed we'd split costs. I set the paper down and looked him straight in the eye. "Splitting means both sides give. So far, I've been covering the gas, electric, water, and all the weekly groceries. You two have been living here rent-free." Nathan avoided my gaze, but Leah let out a nervous laugh. "We're saving for our own place, you know that. We're family." I stood up. Family respects each other's stuff. You changed the lock on the front door and used my things without asking. I handed Nathan an envelope with a breakdown of utilities and a fair usage fee for their 2 rooms. "That's about 1/3 of your combined income. Reasonable for this area," I told them. Leah's face turned red. "You can't do that." "We didn't budget for rent," I gave a thin smile. "Then you'll have to set some priorities. The pantry key stays with me until the first payment hits my account." I walked past them into the hallway. Nathan called after me that I was being selfish, but it didn't touch me. I felt this strange lightness I hadn't known in years. Out in the garden, I saw Leah furiously on her phone, probably venting to her mom. I didn't care. I'd spent years taking care of everyone else. Now I was taking care of my own boundaries. That evening, the kitchen stayed cold, and for the first time in months, the house felt peaceful because they were sulking in their rooms. But the real fight was still coming. The peace lasted exactly 2 days. On the 3rd evening, I walked in to find my living room completely rearranged. Nathan and Leah had hauled their old furniture out of storage and shoved my antique chest of drawers into the dark hallway. "It just feels cozier this way," Renata Leah said, kicking her feet up on my coffee table. They were watching TV at ear-splitting volume. I didn't say a word. I went down to the basement and flipped the breaker for the living room. Everything went dark and quiet in a heartbeat. "What the hell happened?" Nathan yelled from upstairs. I came back up holding the little ceramic fuse. "Overload," I said dryly. "Old wiring. The living room can't handle a big home theater setup." Leah stormed into the hall. "You did that on purpose?" I looked at her calmly. "This is my house. I decide how much power gets used and where my furniture stays. If the setup here doesn't work for you, you're welcome to find something more modern." Nathan tried to play peacemaker, but Leah cut him off. "We're not going anywhere. We have a right to be here." I stepped closer. "You have the right to the 2 rooms I gave you. The rest of the house is my space." I dragged my chest of drawers back with a strength I didn't know I still had. Nathan finally helped, clearly embarrassed under my stare. Leah slammed upstairs and slammed her door. That night, I sat alone in the soft darkness of my living room and soaked in the quiet. I knew they'd try to wear me down, but they'd forgotten something important. I knew every corner of this house, every weak spot, every rule. They were just tenants in my life, and their notice period was coming up even if they didn't realize it yet. In the dark, I started planning the next move. This wasn't about furniture anymore. It was about the respect they'd already thrown away. The following week, I started taking my house back one piece at a time. I disconnected the Wi-Fi in the common areas and changed the password. When Nathan complained he couldn't work from home, I just shrugged. My account, my connection. "If you need internet, get your own mobile hotspot," I said while watering my flowers. Leah tried a new tactic, pure ignoring. She left dishes piled up, didn't clean, and hogged the bathroom for hours. I didn't argue. I collected her dirty plates in a plastic bin and set it outside their door. I stopped clearing the hair from the drain, too. I locked the main bathroom and started using only the small guest half bath, the one with the key only I had. "This is inhumane," Leah yelled the next morning, standing in front of the locked door. "I have to get ready for work." I came out of the guest bath with my towel. "There's a sink in the laundry room downstairs." "Leah, it's meant for guests. Until you start doing your share of the chores, the main bath stays private." Nathan watched his wife shake with anger. He looked more and more caught in the middle. "Mom, can't we just talk like normal people?" I stopped. "Normal talk requires honesty, Nathan. You moved in saying you'd help me. But who cooks? Who cleans? Who pays the heating oil bill? Me." I saw the realization in his eyes, and the weakness too. He was too comfortable to push back on Leah, and she was too greedy to back down. That afternoon, though, I noticed something interesting. A real estate agent's car parked a couple houses down. An idea clicked. If they loved this house so much, maybe they needed to feel what it was like when it wasn't a given anymore. I picked up the phone and called my old friend, who worked as a local real estate advisor. We needed a valuation just for information, of course. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. I hadn't warned Nathan or Leah. My friend Carla came in with her clipboard and camera. "Nice property, Renata. Great location for rental income or a partial sale," she said loud enough for the upstairs to hear. Leah came running down the stairs, Nathan trailing behind, looking uneasy. "What's going on?" "Who is that?" Leah asked, voice shrill. I smiled at Carla. "This is Carla. She's helping me figure out the market value. I'm thinking about turning the ground floor into a vacation rental, or maybe selling the whole place and moving to a nice senior community by the lake." The shock on Nathan's face was real. "But Mom, this is our home. It's my house, Nathan." I corrected him gently. "And since you two say you can't afford the costs anyway, it doesn't make financial sense for me to keep this big place just for 2 tenants who aren't contributing anything." Carla started taking photos of the living room. Leah tried to block the shot. "You can't do this. We live here." Carla looked over her glasses. "Without a lease, you don't have much say if the owner decides to sell." That was when Leah lost it. She started screaming that I was a heartless mother and that she'd convince Nathan never to speak to me again. I stayed calm. "If that's your choice, Leah, so be it. But the showings start next week. Nathan stayed quiet. He looked around the house like he was seeing it for the first time as something that didn't belong to him. The sale threat was my strongest card. I had no real plans to leave my home, but they needed to understand their security was an illusion built on my goodwill. And that goodwill was almost gone. When Carla left, a heavy silence fell. Leah stormed into the kitchen, probably hunting for liquor. But the cabinets were still locked. The pressure started working. Nathan came into the kitchen the next evening, holding the envelope I'd given him weeks earlier. I transferred this month's amount, Mom, and part of the back payments. I nodded. Good start, Nathan. But that doesn't fix the respect issue. Leah, on the other hand, tried sabotage. While I was out shopping, she cranked the heat in the whole house to blast the bills higher. When I walked in and felt the sauna, I didn't confront her. I called the heating tech. An hour later, there was a lock on the thermostat in the basement. I set it to a comfortable 68 degrees and not a degree higher. It's freezing up here, she complained that evening. I sat in my chair with a blanket and a book. Put on a sweater, Leah. It gets chilly in November around here. I can't afford sky-high heating bills if I'm saving for that senior community. Every move I made was now a direct answer to their provocations. I heard them arguing upstairs. Nathan wanted her to apologize, but she called him a mama's boy. It hurt to hear how she talked to him, but I knew he had to fight this battle himself. I couldn't save him from the woman he'd brought into my house. That night, I heard them creeping through the hallway, probably looking for the cabinet or basement keys. But I kept my keys in a little pouch on my wrist, even while sleeping. They had no control over my resources anymore. The next morning, I found a rental listing on the kitchen table. Nathan had left it there. A small victory, I thought, sipping my tea. Reality was finally sinking in. That weekend, Nathan and Leah invited friends over for a barbecue in the backyard without asking. They used my grill and my stored firewood. When I saw the group, I walked out calmly. I greeted the guests politely, then took the tongs from Nathan's hand. Glad you could come, I told their friends. But unfortunately, the grilling is limited to 1 hour today. I've reserved the yard for a private meeting. Leah rolled her eyes. Renata, don't be so embarrassing. We're celebrating. I looked her dead in the eye. The wood you're burning is mine. The grill is mine. And the ground you're standing on is mine. If you want to host, people do it in your rented rooms or ask first. Their friends looked mortified and started packing up. Once the guests were gone, Leah exploded. You're ruining our social life, she screamed. You're just a bitter old woman. I waited until she ran out of steam. Then I said softly, if I'm so terrible, why are you still here? Why don't you take what little money you have and move into a place where you make the rules? Nathan stood there with his head down. We can't find anything we can afford. Mom, he finally admitted. That's the problem, I said. You want the lifestyle of a homeowner without any of the responsibility. You treat me like the hired help in my own home. I pulled out a prepared agreement. Either you sign this official sublease with all the rules and responsibilities, or you get formal notice because I need the space for my new household help. You have 24 hours. I left them standing in the yard. The wind picked up and the fire in the grill slowly died. I'd raised the stakes. This wasn't a game anymore. It was a fight for the dignity of my later years. In Nathan's eyes, I saw a spark of respect for the first time in years, or maybe it was fear. Either way, as long as it worked, I didn't care. The 24 hours passed almost silently. Nathan signed the agreement. Leah didn't, but she went quiet. That was the moment the power balance finally flipped. Since Nathan was now officially a tenant, I treated him like one. If the rent was late, he got a formal reminder on his door. If Leah yelled in the hallway, I reminded her of the agreed-upon noise limits for the rooms. One day, I came home from shopping early and heard Leah in the living room. She wasn't crying. She was raging. She's destroying us, Nathan. We have to take her to court. There has to be a way to declare her incompetent. My heart skipped a beat, but I stayed calm. I hit record on my phone and held it near the door crack. "Stop it, Leah." I heard Nathan's tired voice. "She's not incompetent. She's just smarter than we are. We thought we could take advantage of her and she held up a mirror. I'm ashamed." Those words from Nathan were the first time in ages he showed some backbone. Leah kept yelling, but he got up and left the room. I stepped into the hallway, phone safely in my pocket. Nathan looked at me, and for the first time in months, he didn't run. I looked at an apartment, Mom. A small 2-bedroom in town. "It's nothing fancy, but it's affordable." I nodded slowly. "That's a good decision, Nathan. For both of you." "She won't come with me," he said quietly. "We're splitting up." The news surprised me, but it felt right. Leah had used him as a tool to get to my inheritance, and once the tool stopped working, there was no marriage left. I put a hand on his shoulder. "You can stay here until the move is set, but only you." In that moment, I was his mother again, but a mother with clear boundaries. Leah's departure was loud and messy. She tried to take some of my heirlooms, but I stood at the door with a list. "That stays. So does that. You didn't buy that." She cursed and insulted me, but I didn't rise to it. I was solid as a rock. When she finally tossed her last suitcase into her mom's car, she paused one more time. "You're going to die all alone in this big, cold house, Renata." She screamed out the window. I just smiled a little. "Better alone in peace than with you in a war, Leah." "Safe travels." I closed the front door and turned the key. It was the sweetest sound I'd heard in a long time. The house felt brighter instantly, like a shadow had lifted. Nathan helped me clean up the mess she'd left behind. We worked in silence. There were no apologies that could fix the damage of the last few months. But there was a new kind of teamwork. He respected my rules now, without me having to say them out loud. He'd finally learned that love and respect aren't negotiable. That evening, we sat together on the back porch. "What are you going to do now, Mom?" he asked. "Really sell." I looked out over my garden, fading into the evening light. "No. I'm going to fix up the part you two used and rent it to a quiet college student who can help me in the garden. I want life in the house, but not poison." Nathan nodded. "That's smart." He looked a little sad, but mostly relieved. He moved into his own place the next day. I sent him off with a box of his old childhood things. It was time for him to grow up away from my apron strings and Leah's manipulation. A year has passed. My house smells like lavender and fresh coffee again. The college student upstairs is quiet and sometimes brings me fresh flowers from the market. We have clear rules, and they work beautifully. My life has found a new rhythm, one built on mutual respect instead of self-sacrifice. Nathan visits once a month. He looks healthier, works hard, and has learned to handle his own finances. We talk about ordinary things, the weather, his job, my roses. We rarely mention those dark months when Leah ruled the roost, but they hang in the air like a quiet reminder. He knows now that my house is my castle, and he's only welcome as a guest as long as he honors the hostess. I often sit in my window spot, the one Leah once tried to claim. I look out at the mountains and feel free. I didn't fight with lawyers or make big threats. I simply held my boundaries and controlled access to my own resources. It was a quiet victory, but the most lasting one of my life. Sometimes I see women my age in town complaining about kids who take advantage of them or ignore them. I share my story not to brag, but to show them you don't have to be a victim of your own family. You just have to have the courage to keep the key to your own life in your hand. The house isn't empty. It's filled with my peace. I'm Renata, I'm 68, and I'm the queen of my own little kingdom. My legacy isn't just the house, it's the strength I found inside it. And as the sun sets behind the pines, I know I'm exactly where I want to be. Alone, but never lonely. Free, but deeply rooted. Sometimes you don't have to defeat anyone. It's enough to take back control, and everything falls back into its rightful place on its own.